Hi everyone, and sorry for the delay. We had a bit of technical difficulties getting started here today, but this is the 4DMethod 4D and Wakanda user group, July 20th, 2016 meeting. Our agenda for today is we'll talk a little bit about 4DMethod. We'll get some 4D news from Jim Sobczak and Brian Young at 4D. We'll get some Wakanda news from Jiang Liu, at 4D as well. We'll get the 4D iNug e-digest from Ed Hammond. We'll take a look at a little bit of what's to know in the knowledge base, and I'll be talking about that. And also I'll just mention a little bit about the new command find and sorted array. I've been tinkering with that, and I have a demo video that I'll be posting shortly about how wonderful that is. We'll have our special topic today. Dani Beaubien will demo his code analysis component. We'll get some questions and answers in, and we'll talk about our next meeting on August 31st, and then we'll wrap up. So let's see. So welcome. My name is Brent Raymond. I host the 4DMethod 4D and Wakanda user group. You can check our website out at 4dmethod.com, and if you'd like to contact us, our email address is 4dmethod@gmail.com. 4DMethod is a user group. We put it together to combine efforts with other user groups around the world who meet about 4D and Wakanda. We'd like to bring together a scattered community of developers and users. We stream the meetings, sometimes not always gracefully, but we try to via Google Hangouts to allow people to participate from everywhere in the world, and we encourage everyone to join us who's interested. We record these meetings and presentations that people make for us in the special topic segment to be viewed again or shared with others or saved for all of your ancestors to watch in the future. We attempt to provide new content and exposure to all the regional groups and just new information and see what everybody else is doing out there. I just wanted to take a moment to step back and acknowledge all of those involved in the terror attack in Nice. We have, of course, a large contingency of people in the 4D community in France, and it's unfortunate to start the hangout with mentioning such events and political events at that, but just wanted to say that I hope that soon we can all find a way just to get along and sort things out peacefully, and very sorry for anyone who was affected by this event. Additionally, I wanted to take a moment to remember Brendan Coveney. He was the general manager at 4D from the year 2000 to 2011, and he passed away unexpectedly this year and will certainly be missed in the 4D community and beyond. For me, Brendan always added an exciting and fun energy to the 4D summits and with any interaction with 4D in general. He always was completely engaged in trying to help people and adding energy and focus to everyone involved in 4D, and he shaped my experience with the 4D community for over a decade. So everyone is really sad to see him go, and it's quite a bummer. I know that people at there at 4D at the 4D office are share the same feeling. So and with that, I'll kick it over to Jim Sobczak, and who will give us some news from 4D Central there in San Jose.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Thank you, Ed. Welcome everyone from the 4D offices here in San Jose. We have a different group here today. Brian is out at a trade show, and so I will be doing a little bit of the marketing update. So first off, thank you for the folks at Art Institute there, Brent and Ed, for organizing these meetings, for inviting us to participate, and thank you for remembering the tragic events in Nice. Our hearts go out to our friends and colleagues there all over France. So I agree with you, Brent. This is getting to be crazy. So with regards to Brendan, we're all really still in a state of shock here at 4D. He was only 50 years old and doing so well at his new company. As most of you know, he was vacationing with his family in Amsterdam, all over Europe actually, but at the time he was in Amsterdam, so at least he got to have that time with his family. We were captivated by Thibaut's account of the wake and the funeral right after his passing, and I think only Thibaut could tell a story like that with such compassion and humor. So personally, for me, Brendan taught me just about everything I know about the 4D business, in particular the OEM program. He guided me into that, and that's pretty much what I've been doing with 4D in the 13 years I've been here. So, but for everyone here in this office, he was definitely a mentor at some stage in our careers here, and he will be missed. So thanks for remembering both of those events, Brent. Appreciate that. So on to what we've been working at 4D. So some marketing stuff first. The Summit Replay. Some of this Brent will mention in more detail. Summit Replay, we continue to release new Summit videos from the sessions in Portland. The latest batch went out on July 8th, I believe, and there were 3 new videos there. And Brian is doing a great job of the video editing. I think they're really clear. The sound is good on most of them. So we're really happy to release those. And those are available to Summit attendees only. So when you log into Partner Central with your username and password, you'll see those available there if you did register for the Summit with that email address. So eventually we'll release those to the 4D community in general at some point. The 4D corporate video is up on our website, of course, at 4D.com. That was something we showed at. Thank you. Something we showed at the Summit. It's only about 4 minutes long. It's a great tool for developers to show end users or prospects who need to know a little bit more about 4D as a company, what we've done, our founders, some of the things that we've done over the last 32 years. So really well done. We're working on subtitles in various languages, including Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian. So that should be international pretty soon. So pretty cool. Only 4 minutes, so please do take a look at that. For DEF CONs and summits, we're just finished up finally. We had a DEF CON in Montreal in June, and we had a summit in Tokyo on July 14th. That was well attended. And we also had a summit in Sydney, Australia on July 19th. So I think JPR did the training at those, but those went really well. And so those are pretty much wrapped up. We're now planning our roadshow for 2017, and we've already started the content of those roadshows. It looks like we'll go out on the road in April and May of 2017. So we're now just deciding the cities that we're going to hit. The content, like I said, is already underway. In 2015, we did 3 trainings in 6 cities. This year, we'll probably do a full-day roadshow the first day and a training in each of the cities in the second day, but not completely decided. But last year, or 2015, when we didn't do the training, we had people say, we wish we would have had training there. So we might just do the training in every city this year. But we're really looking forward to those. Really a lot of fun for us to get out on the road, see our customers out there. So you'll be reading more about that in the future. Just a few business points. June 30th was the last day that customers who are using V13 were able to upgrade to V15. That upgrade pricing has now ended, but if you missed the deadline, June 30th deadline, please contact your sales rep. We'll see what we can do. We had a tremendous amount of sales in that last month from people who were on 13 and moving to 15. And of course, it was June 30th was the end of the first half of our fiscal year 2016. We hit all of our global targets. The U.S. hit all of our targets for the first 6 months, well over those targets by several percentage points. So we're really happy with the way 2016 went the first half, and substantial year-over-year growth in the first 6 months compared to 2015. So we're just super happy with the way sales are going right now. And finally, the last point, I want to just talk about the R releases. I know Brent will mention these. Currently, V15 R4 is the current version. We're hoping that you partners out there will start beta testing V15 R5, because that will be the last R release before V16. So as you know, these iterations of R releases come out about every 3 months. But after V15 R5, it'll be V15 R6, which equals V16. So you'll be hearing, again, much more about that in the fall of this year. So we're moving right along with the development cycle and staying right in line with the releases we want to have. So that's about all for me, Brent and Ed. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
So we got some interesting news there. The road show will be in, you said, April and March?
April or May.
April or May,
yeah,
of next year. That was a very worthwhile thing to attend last year when they did that. The training was really fantastic for anyone involved in 4D and looking to learn some new tricks and maintenance advice and all across the whole spectrum of information. So let's hope that they make it to a city near all of us. I know I'll intend to try to go. And V16, when did you say that that would be heading our way?
I don't have a release date for that yet. We're looking around Q1. It could be early in Q1. It depends how the beta of R5 goes and how the R releases go. So
great.
The date out there, but we're shooting for early next year.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, Jim.
Welcome.
We'll move on now to some Wakanda news from Chung. Thanks so much for joining us. Ricardo Mello couldn't be here today, so we are looking forward to hearing the news from Chung on Wakanda.
Thanks, Brent. Yeah, as Brent just said, Ricardo's out this week, so I'm feeling for him. So a lot of things have happening on Wakanda side. So I'll start with some marketing news. I'm happy to announce that Wakanda is going to be Diamond sponsor in NGconf Europe this year again. So we had a really successful show last year. We had another successful show in the counterpart of NGconf in the United States this May. So about like 15,000 people participated in this show. So we got a lot of good results with our new Wakanda Digital App Factory. So we're expecting a larger crowd in the NGconf Europe this year. So it's taking place in October 25th and 26th in Paris. So we're going to have a big presence there in the community, in the conference. So if you're planning on going, so welcome to swing by and say hi. Most likely our team is going to be there. The entire team is going to be there. So that's the marketing part. And another part, you probably already got the email from Samir. There is a new pricing plans coming to Wakanda. Noted is that we added a monthly subscription to developer licenses. It starts only about $29 a month minimum. So instead of paying for full license at $3.99, you can start monthly subscription just like cloud. That's one change that's been made to Wakanda. So on the technical part, that's probably you get the announcements as well. Now we added a Aurelia integration connector to another framework into Wakanda. And this is not an effort by our team. This is an effort by our community member, Gavin. So he's really passionate in Wakanda. He actually made this connector by himself, released to the community, open source on his GitHub. Nice. So yeah, he did it very nicely. He made a connector, a skeleton, and a scaffolding template just by himself, and it's usable right away. So you're welcome to search for that and check it out. Aurelia is a similar framework to Angular. Yeah. So it's been welcomed. It's fairly new, but it's really popular so far. And last thing I want to bring up is we're not having a new release very soon, but we just released a new alpha. I'm not sure if it's alpha anymore. Our new release of Angular 2 and Ionic 2, and this time we included Windows support. So now you, in addition to Mac, now you'll be able to use Angular 2 and Ionic 2 in Studio on Windows. So now Angular 2 and Ionic 2 are becoming more stabilized as they go, and this beautiful Wakanda connector to them are getting stabilized too. So we have a lot of confidences in them, and as soon as they are ready, we're going to have them right away. So these are the news from Wakanda side, and back to you, Brent.
Thanks so much. And is that how do you spell that, Aurelia?
Aurelia is A-U-R-E-L-I-A.
E-L-I-A. Cool. Yeah, definitely worth looking into and seeing how we can use that with Wakanda. So thanks so much for the update there. Very exciting stuff with the conference, the NGconf in Europe. That ought to give some really great exposure for Wakanda. 15,000 people. So I'm sure you'll have some interested parties there from the 4D community as well in Paris. So thank you for that update. And now the 4D iNug eDigest with Ed Hammond. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Brent. Oh, there we go. Unmuted. Thank you, Brent. Got a couple of interesting threads on the iNug. I had a chance to read through a number of digests all in one weekend after spending some time doing some R&R. And on the 4D side of things, specifically, there was a big thread, Time Machine on Mac not detecting data file changes, started by Dave Nasrallah. The items that I found interesting on this thread were a fairly good discussion of backup strategies in general. It highlighted how you need a knowledge of your physical backup systems and how they work, and they touched on cloud backup strategies, and you also need to know how 4D backup works and how it interacts with whatever data file copying systems that you have in place. There's also a good discussion on risk assessment for your backup strategies and how safe you feel you need to be. So anybody who is providing solutions for other people, they should take a look at that thread and see how it dovetails into their own strategies. Particularly in the risk assessment category, you need to find out how comfortable you are with recovering systems for your clients. The other thing that struck me over the last month or so is a number of threads that highlight how 4D dovetails and is being integrated into a number of other solutions and has to connect to other things out on the internet or external systems. One of those that I found particularly interesting recently was a thread by Michael Giraz on Apache to 4D. And this thread was mainly covered using Apache or Nginx to front-end a 4D web-based solution using rewrite rules. There's very good documentation on this thread on setting up rewrite rules for Apache and Nginx with example links for setting up mod rewrite and a link to tech notes for using mod proxy if you're using Apache, and some Nginx config examples. So a lot of good information on that thread. Another thread, calling a REST server that returns time This was a link or a thread started by Dave Nasrallah. I have to give Dave a shout out for providing a lot of material for me this month. But this thread involved understanding how time values are stored and converted in multiple systems. It highlights once again how our development environment and solutions are increasingly based upon integrating with external systems, the web, understanding standards and RFCs, and doing date and time math using 4D. This particular thread had multiple ways to achieve the desired result, and it's worth checking out. And lastly, Dave Nasrallah also had a thread, 4D can't handle JSON response that starts with a bracket. And the interesting thing I found here was it highlights the difference between arrays versus objects in a JSON string and how to deal with consuming REST services. The big thing to remember here is that the 4D C object construct is not JSON. Get the documentation for the REST services that you're trying to consume and know what responses are possible from the REST service itself. Also know that 4D JSON parse, you should know what the 4D JSON parse and object commands do. There's a big shout out to Cannon Smith from Synergy Farm Solutions on his object module. So when you're dealing with objects within 4D, certainly check that out. Seems to be a lot of people singing its praises, and we thank him for contributing to the 4D community there. And that covers the e-digest for this month.
Thanks, Ed. And everyone, just that's a lot to absorb as usual, and it's a lot of work to stay tuned into all of the discussion on the NUG. Check out the 4dmethod.com page on the e-digest for a thorough listing of the notable discussions on the NUG. There's a wealth of knowledge that you can take advantage of in the community. If you check out the slides here, we have a couple of links on how to register for the NUG and how to browse all of the discussions on the NABL. Thanks so much again. And now a very quick what's to know of the knowledge base. I just wanted to mention, as Jim did earlier, that the session notes from the 4D summits, both in the U.S. and in Europe, are being released on the knowledge base. If you were in Europe, there are some different sessions in the U.S. To check out, and vice versa. It was my first time at the European Summit this year, and I was pleasantly surprised at the different subject matter that they had there with their presentations. Definitely some interesting, new and interesting topics that they covered over there that we weren't able to see in our summit. So, and vice versa. So it's I encourage everyone to check it out. Too many to actually list for in this What's to Know segment, but I did want to also make note of a nice new tech note from Charlie Vass. The code tracker component is now available for free. If you might remember from back in V11 days, there was a component for this called the method history component, which leverages macros to detect changes in your code base, and then stores versions of the methods in a external data set, and then uses a type of diff interface in a web area to to display the changes over time in these different versions of the methods. And thank you, Charlie, for updating that capability, that component, and largely rewriting the capabilities to have some way to track changes and manage the code base over time, and to it's ready-made to use with systems like Git to push out all of your code base and then be able to commit those to a Git repository for tracking changes. That is one way to do it, and we'll see an even more advanced concept from Dani later in the special topic. I just wanted to make note of the new command find and sorted array, which was made available in v14, if I remember correctly. I'd seen that around, and we hadn't had any quality time with one another, and so finally I decided to run some tests, and I was really pleased with what I found with the new command. Here at the Art Institute, we are very heavily leveraging arrays and array-based access of our data. So we have a large client-server system, and the most efficient way to access our data is by querying and pulling off via selection to array large chunks of data, and then manipulating those locally. So we use find an array like silly. So I was really excited to see how much faster find and sorted array was. It's doing the same kind of thing, just using a different algorithm. It requires a sorted array, so there's a bit of a cost there. However, if you are dealing with large amounts of data, it can be exponentially faster than find an array. It's using the binary search algorithm, where it doesn't sequentially go through the data, one by one to see, well, where's the next occurrence of this. It starts in the middle of the data, and then it sees, based on the sorting, which way it needs to go to find more occurrences of what you're looking for. So the larger the data set is, for instance, I ran a few tests with up to 1 million iterations. Here are the results for just 500,000. And the new command is 17 times faster than the old command. In fact, for this particular process, it was 36 seconds faster than the old command, being able to do the same operation in 2 seconds as opposed to 38 seconds, which amounts to a 94% time savings. It's just, I was blown away. So everyone check it out. I'm going to be posting a short demo and some sample code to my GitHub account shortly after this meeting sometime this week. And check it out for yourself. It's almost too good to believe. You have to see it with your own eyes. So anyways, on to our special topic for today. We have Dani Beaubien, who has been working with 4D since 1993. He has extensive experience building vertical market single-user applications, multi-user client-server applications, and multi-user web applications for a variety of industries. For the last 10 years, he's been focused on using 4D to build web-based vertical market applications that support hundreds of concurrent users, and that's a really exciting way to leverage your 4D applications logic that's been developed over decades, as some of our applications have. He's been developing this code analysis component that he's going to show us today since 2012, and since then the component has continued to evolve, providing more sophisticated analysis tools for the 4D development community. And I just wanted to, I don't want to steal his thunder, but this is freely available to all of us, so hopefully that perked up some attention. Without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Dani. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Brent.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. There we go. So you should see, you see my desktop?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, good. Good. Okay, hi everybody. Just to give a little bit of background on the components, it kind of started with the way I'm working on one of my core projects is me and another developer. We're both remote, and we're basically passing the structures back and forth. And I needed a way to basically know what changes have come in, so that when I go in and I need to make my own changes, I know that I'm not stepping on something else, that I know I'm getting the latest stuff, and I get a sense of how much has changed over time. So what I did is I started with just using the new 4D commands that were added back in 13 and 12 to be able to export and create this effectively snapshots. So before I passed the code on, I would do a snapshot of the methods and the structures, and then when I got the structure back, I could do a comparison just to see what the differences were. And from there, it just slowly evolved. I started adding a little bit more analysis. I started taking advantage of some of the extra abilities to be able to get into the form objects, some of those, what do you call it, settings, put those out, and then moved into doing some code, taking advantage of self-documentation, and kind of evolving from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick kind of touch base on high-level functionality of the component, and then I'm going to dig into some of the more specifics. So I've got the component running in one of the projects that I'm working on. This is the code analysis main window. There's a number of tabs, main tabs. Each of the tabs have some sub-tabs within them. On the analysis tab, what we have is that it's basically looking at the code kind of from a complexity point of view, just kind of line counts, just to give away a step back, looking at ideas of places to take a look at. So the usual stuff, be able to line counts. I love that kind of stuff. You get your number of lines of code, comments, how many blank lines, you get your totals, you can get all that. This complexity analysis, I'll dig into that in a little bit as to what that means, but it's just a way of figuring out how complex it is to test. I'm also giving you a count of how many times this method is called. This is best effort. Actually, all of this stuff is best effort. It's hard to do when you're doing an execute to figure out which commands are actually used. Yep. On the index side, I've gone through, and since I'm parsing the code anyways, I'm looking at to see which fields are actually being used in various commands. This shows you the commands that I'm actually looking for. Those are commands that work better when they're using with index fields. So I report how many times that command was that field was used, what kind of index it is, and I also do some analysis on the values in the database, and it gives you a percentage of how many of them are unique. So in this case, for this field, 100% of the values are unique. So it just gives me a sense of checking out to see what how effective my index usage and coverage is. On the differences side, this is where I'm doing a comparison of a snapshot that's been saved to disk against the structure that I'm running against, and give some information based on that. I'm also able to, for things that are not code, so in this case I have some web folders, some resource folders as part of the export, and I'm able to compare against a previous snapshot of those folders against what I have currently in the structure, and get some information on that. On the export side, this is where you're creating a snapshot, so this is actually creating and dumping it to disk. So in this case, here are all the snapshots, so this is what the code would look like each of the methods is put out to disk, attributes, and so on. I am doing some organization. Actually, I guess an older snapshot. I do organization just to make it a little bit more compact, which is set by preference. You can save everything as HTML. So this is kind of like grabbing, do I have? Yeah. So this is what produces this. So it's kind of like a, like the Java docs concept, where here I'm doing self-documenting code. So it's pulling the comments from the top of the method, it's parsing out what the parameters are and any sort of comments that might be on the parameters, and dumps them into HTML. There's two different ways of doing this. So the one I showed you was for shared. So this is for, like, I have some components that I produce for my projects, and so that documentation I basically write out as shared. So only the methods that are marked with a shared attribute are actually put into the HTML. Things like line counts, calling methods, called methods, that's not included in that kind of export, whereas if you're just doing all as HTML, it will do it. DocSet, I use a tool called Dash. It's actually quite useful. It's based on these DocSets, so this is a way of producing the documentation in that form, and then you can use it within the Dash application. I'm pretty sure there's Windows comparables. It's quite useful. Method comments. So what this is dealing with is basically this. So I can go ahead and clear all of the 4D project method comments, and then what I can also do is I can go ahead, okay, I haven't done it. I can go ahead and update and bring across all of the 4D comments into, so it's pulling it out of the method. And so what this is useful for particularly is if you're a component developer and you'd like to have a hover over a tooltip, this is what comes up when the component is actually compiled into a 4DC file, which is very useful to have. Yes. Okay, so now I'm going to dig into a little bit of the nitty-gritties. Let's start here. So the complexity, cyclomatic complexity, what this really deals with is it's counting, let me give you one. It's counting decision points. So if you're thinking about code coverage and testing, you have an if. And so there's really a decision point. Either I go in or I bypass. And so this is counting the number of conditions where it can go one way or the other that this method has. So the more ifs, the more case, the more for loops and such, the more complex it is to test. And so that's what this is about. And so this will go in and it'll colorize the lines based on, so you can set up a threshold in preferences. You can set up a threshold for what you consider medium or high risk. And it's not prescriptive as to what you should do. You might have a certain level of complexity you're willing to tolerate, or maybe this one needs to be split up and refactored and broken up into smaller pieces, so it's easier to test. It's effectively what it's doing. Yes, I think that's all I want to say there. Yeah, you can also save the results, so it basically saves the table out. On the indexes side, this is actually quite interesting. There was some discussion around this on the NUG 6 or 7 months ago. This is very interesting. So what it can tell me is, especially if I want to fine-tune the type of index, whether I'm using a B tree, whether I'm using a cluster, this can help me make that decision. So in this case, I'm seeing the district ID. It's actually mostly not unique. So a cluster index in this case is probably more effective. So if I want to go ahead and start really fine-tuning and trying to force that performance and optimize how 4D utilizes things, I can use this information. I can also look at stuff like, in this case, this field is not indexed. It's used 5 times. Am I concerned about that? Let's see if I know. So yeah, here, there's 15 times. So maybe this is a place where I can go look to find out, you know, how heavily is this used? Is this a place that I can index? Detailed reports, what it'll do is it actually produces, let me just wait for it to finish. Produces 2 reports. One is it gives you every single line that field is used. It gives you a table number, field number, the line number, and the line of code. It's just a slightly different view of that same information, but it gives you a way to go look. So really, where is this used? And then this one is the other side. It gives you, you know, for the field, and it gives you the counts and stuff. So if you want, you can keep that tracked over time or not. So this is mostly just about going in, looking at the analysis, figuring out what you want to do. When you push the button, the analysis index, it actually gives you 2 options. You can do a full analysis, which is this. Calculating this percentage of unique takes a long time, especially if you have a big data file, which is what I'm running on. If you do the counts only, it's much faster, and it's just going to do basically populate these first 3 columns. Yeah. Obviously, I don't have a cancel, so we'll wait. Yeah, and then all of my parsing of code, especially when I'm looking for particular function names, like query and stuff, I do not use hard-coded text. I basically use the command name, and then I run through, I build up a list of the commands using the command name, and then I parse for that information. So it supports multiple languages. Whatever you've got set up, it should work without issue, which was actually kind of fun to set up. Yeah, unfortunately, I picked a big one, but it's the most interesting. I don't do all the commands. I've just done the ones, well, like I said, I started this really mostly for my own needs, so as my needs come up, then I will expand things and push things out. On the differences side, so what I've done is I've gone here and I've done a comparison against this snapshot. There's 3 different kinds. So one is that in this case, it exists in the snapshot as well as the local database. It only exists in the database. It only exists on disk. So in this case, this was removed. If I want to see the differences, let's see, try to find something different. You double click. Sorry, I resized my screen. And then you get to see the differences. If I want, I can go in directly into the method. I can refresh. So if I'm working on the method, I can refresh to check what's going on. Pushing this apply button will actually pull it from the disk and update the method. I'm not going to do that in this case. I can see the file on disk if I want, so if I'm trying to figure out, I want to do some other comparisons, I can get to that. There's actually alternate views of this screen, so you can choose to see it side by side in this case, so I'm seeing which lines, and a little bit more highlighting is going on, or you can see it in vertical. You can also use Command 1, Command 2. I basically, in all my screens, if there's multiple tabs, Command 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will flip back and forth. This is more Git-like in how it's doing. There's also some of the options you can do, so if you don't want to see the attribute line, one of the things that's quite interesting, and I actually use this, is when I moved one of my projects from version 14 to version 15, I did a snapshot just prior, and then in 15 I did a comparison, and I could see all the places where there were some differences in the code, so how null dates are represented in the code has changed slightly over time. All the underscore O methods, the ones that have been basically are suggested to no longer be used, gets highlighted. So it's an interesting way of seeing some of those changes that you don't necessarily realize. Like I said, you can hide the attribute line, hide comment lines, hide blank lines, and so on. Except I actually have to do that, yes. Let me turn those back on.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So sometimes when when I edit methods or anyone else, sometimes it's a matter of reformatting or spacing things out, or adding more comments here or there about what's happening in the method, but the actual core of the commands that are happening don't change. Is your component able to handle that kind of scenario?
Yeah. So there are options on the difference engine. So here you can choose what to ignore. Okay, so I can say ignore case. So when it's comparing a snapshot against what's in the structure, it basically lowercases everything and does its comparison. Multiple spaces, so that's what you're talking about. Blank lines, attribute lines. So particularly between 14 and 15, the attribute line actually changed sorting. So the language gets moved first. Which means that every single method automatically has a change. Well, I turn this on, and now it's suppressing that information. And so then you can also choose to, okay, I know I have a lot of things only in my structure, so I'm just gonna don't show me that. I do a recheck, and now only those ones don't show up. So you can start to fine tune what you're able to see.
Cool.
Okay. So I don't want to see that either. I only want to see the things that have changed. So you start to fine tune. And so what I do basically is I go in and, obviously you're having to open up every file, every from the snapshot, you're having to open up the record, and I'm having to go through and potentially parse depending on what things you have and pull out those lines. So it's pretty extensive. What's going on? It's quite illuminating sometimes. And this snapshot concept is quite different than what has been done by like Josh and the others and Charlie. This is really like a point in time capture. So this snapshot is complete and self-contained. Obviously, there's not form definitions, but there's method definitions, and so you can choose to produce these snapshots in slightly different ways. So on the preferences side, so by changing how the folder is named, so here in this case I'm choosing a date. So this is not Git friendly, because every time, and Charlie does the same thing, is every time you cause this export to happen or update to happen, I basically am creating a new folder. So as I go over time, I'm creating new folders, and in my case, I'm adding version numbers on the end of it for my own happiness. Mm-hmm. I could also do it by date and time, right? If I wanted to do more Git-like, I would just append nothing, and so then I would just have, in this case, I would just have a master N and C folder, and when I do an export, then it's exporting over top and it's updating. And so then truly in that case, then every time I go into my snapshot, it's always going to be the most recent snapshot. Git will take care of all of the history. This is just most recent. And so it's going to keep this up to date and reflect what's going on. And then I would use the Git tools to go back and, I need to get that snapshot I did 6 months ago, and you pull it out and do your comparison. You go from there. Okay. One of the challenges is that Git in particular, or I was using another system, they add their own hidden folders and stuff and files. And so you can also go in and say, when I'm doing my comparisons, please ignore everything that has this. So in this case, .git. So it's not going to pull up and all of a sudden show me all the the hidden files that Git puts into place, which is going to be inside that same folder. So it's an opportunity to manage that and to suppress some of that noise out of it. Also, end-of-line stuff. The code, the comparison normalizes the end-of-line characters, so it doesn't matter if it was exported on Windows, on Mac, on Unix. The file ends up in a folder, and you're trying to do a comparison. It will normalize the end-of-line characters on both sides, and so you'll never see those as differences. Git has very strong preferences as to what the end-of-line should be. Which is why I kind of was forced into dealing with this, because I'm dealing with cross-platform stuff. Yes, answer your question, Brent?
Yeah, I was just wondering, how do you handle the diff view? Are you using a web area as well, or are you using something else?
This is all 4D list.
Okay.
Yeah, and needless to say, I'm quite excited about the changes in 15 around enhanced styling. Actually, this is a pretty boring one to choose.
That's a Listbox?
Yeah, this is just a list box.
Cool.
Actually, let me do this. Let's go. Oh, I picked the wrong one. Let me pick one that's not in there. Let's do. There we go. So stuff like this is quite nice. Being able to see like an individual character. So in this view, if you have a single line difference, so this in this case, one line has been modified, I'm able to style and show you the character. In the side-by-side view, it's a little bit easier. I do that, but there's some limitations. And so the list will resize itself quite nicely. So it's split in half in this one. I was pretty proud of that one. That was pretty fun. And this one's a little bit easier because it's just one column. But yeah, this is all based on 4D list.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's quite it works well. I know that some people are using the web stuff. Actually, a lot of people are using the web stuff, but you give up complete control over that. Doing some of this, ignoring cases, multiple spaces, blank lines, I'm able to do that because I have full control over it. So far, I haven't regretted that decision. It's been a little bit of work, but it's been okay. It's been okay. So this is on the method side. So in this case, I have some additional folders that I have that go part of this as part of the export, and so I can also go through and compare what's in the local, which my current structure, versus what's been put out to the remote snapshot. It won't. I don't have any support for looking at, okay, what is the difference? I have, you have to use, external tool for that. But this, like I said, it's based on what I needed at the time, and it works.
Right.
It works. So this is the export stuff. Oh, look at that. Runtime error. So obviously it's a place where I use to dump errors into as well. So something to look at. This is a dev version, so obviously I broke something. All is text is fine. All is HTML. I just want to show you that.
I'm interested in the DocSet as well. Could you talk a little bit more about that? I am just not as familiar with Dash, but perhaps I should be.
Sure. I'll just produce one. It actually uses. It's pretty good. Okay. There's my DocSet. So let me just show this really quick. So this is the full export of the code. So because it's full, it's meant for internal consumption. I'm giving all of the method counts and cyclomatic complexity. I can go into the project methods. Let's go into. Oh, I don't have anything that's interesting. Okay, let's go into. Right. So this piece is what appears when you do all. You're giving some method stats. It's also telling you what's calling it. So if I want to go in and I'll go into compiler methods. Obviously, there's a lot of things in compiler methods, but you're able to jump around and see what method's calling. So if you need to see information, so it's pulling this off of the top of the method. So as you maintain those comments at the top of the method, then let's go here. Just pulling this until it gets to a line that's actually got code on it.
Cool.
It's flexible from that point of view. Share DocSet, right? DocSets. Dash, running Dash.
I know some people have started putting comments in SQL blocks, SQL blocks with if false. I forget how it's done. If false, begin SQL so that they can just type directly in there. Can this component decipher those kind of blocks, or is that?
I haven't attempted that yet. That's a little bit more complex because there's a lot of flexibility. I basically have to start parsing all of the SQL, and so right now I have not. Like I said, also in the executes. So if you're using the executes, the various forms of executes, I'm not going into those text strings either. I don't know of a good way where I can feel comfortable with parsing that. It's definitely a little bit more of a challenge. So yeah, that's where we are right now. So this is the dash tool. So I mean, obviously there's stuff here like, so I don't know. Let's go into JavaScript. So it's just a JavaScript library. It's a really good reference tool. It works really well, actually. I'm quite pleased with it. You can also do searches. So if I wanted to do a search into jQuery, I can just go ahead and do a search. But in here on our side, you know, it's very similar, obviously. But if you go into the modules, then you can see the modules. So this is basically looking like, so in this case, daemon underscore. So if I see that, oh, that's a module. So I can now go into the module and I should find daemon, and there's the method. Or I'm going to go look at move. Oh, there's a couple, and I can jump into it and view it. Cool. It's just a slightly different view, but it's also something that's kind of external. I don't need to have a browser running, and I can do searches.
So it's detecting the modules based on naming convention of the module name first and the method?
No, on the dash side, I'm building a database.
Okay.
A small little SQL database that the dash is part of the DocSet standard, and I'm doing all of this work. So the component is basically building this and putting this together.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite useful, actually.
Yeah.
I quite like it. Like, I do a lot of remote where I'm disconnected, and so this becomes my, you know, if I need HTML, MySQL, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, this is my documentation. This is where I go to, and I did, you know, the full, like the jQuery stuff. The full stuff is in here, like it's what you see on the website. It's
cool.
Quite nice. Quite nice.
Yeah.
Structure, right? Table field information. All right, let's go open up Sublime. It produces one of these JSON files. As more and more commands become available in the 4D language to be able to get more information about the structures and tables and stuff, I've been evolving this. So it really is a snapshot of the database. It's probably the most equivalent to when you export XML when you're looking at the structure editor, the structure in 4D, except instead of it being XML, it's JSON. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Table properties, the form and object properties, same sort of stuff. I didn't export it. It basically goes through all the forms, loads all the forms, produces a JSON file per project form and table form, and saves it to disk. Which now, where the heck did I put it? There we are. So each table organized, auto nodes. I can go ahead and take a look, and there we go. My hope is eventually be able to do something with it, but I think 4D is working on a way of using this for source code versioning. Right now, it's really there so that I can put it into Git or some sort of source code repository, and it just captures changes over time. So if I move one of the objects by 1 pixel, and I do a diff between one export and another, it will show up. I'll be able to see that. So if I need to do a comparison, for me, it's less of an issue because all of my projects are web-based, so it's actually very little layout work or form work that we do, other than what we need from the administrative side. But it's all there, so it's useful from a tracking changes point of view, but that's about as far as it goes. Method comments, I covered that. That's pretty straightforward. Release notes, I keep this up to date. So if you want to know what's kind of going on, if you have an older version, go to newer version, then this goes in there. This is actually one change that's in this version that's not released yet, is that I no longer consider if true and if false a complexity point, just because there is no in or out. It is pretty black and white. It's basically as though it's not there.
That's cool. Is everything included inside the if false also?
It is right now. Yeah.
Cool.
It is right now.
That's great.
Yeah, because it's still. Yeah, I didn't want to make that decision because I didn't want to hide the complexity. Often, for me, if I if false something, it's temporary in nature, and it's because I haven't decided if I want the code yet or I'm rewriting it, so I just leave it in there. Eventually, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I also have all the components, so this is me doing an export, all the shared methods, and everything's in there as well. Is there anything else? Preferences, folder structure. Yeah, just dealing with whether you have the name or the date or nothing when you're doing the various exports. Defining the folders I want to include. Yeah, that's it. I think that's everything I wanted to cover.
Cool. So, with the complexity measure, have you found that you've done a fair amount of refactoring if a certain widely used method comes up as with a high complexity rating?
Yeah, I have. I mean, this particular screenshot doesn't look great, but like this is not my code. This comes from somewhere else. So some of these ones, particularly that are high, yeah, I have started to go back and look at some of them, and to me this is code that smells quote unquote bad. This is code where if I go in and I have to make a change, it's dangerous because there could be an unexpected side effect, especially if it's deep nesting. That's actually another stat that I'm thinking about adding is like what's the deepest level of nesting that's happened inside.
Oh wow!
Because that's quite interesting, right? It's interesting,
right?
And so that's what this is about. It's just all about, for me, anyways. It's about looking at the code and do I want to do something with it? There's also this little view graph. I've been playing with trying to find useful ways of turning the code into graphics so that it helps me look at stuff. So this is just methods by length, methods by complexity, giving you the counts of how many go into it. Other than just an interesting exercise playing with a JavaScript graph, that's about it right now. One thing that I am working on that's coming up is I'm very interested in trying to basically turn like these counts. Here we go. So the number of times a method is called. So there's callers and callees to be able to render that graphically. And so is there a way to take a structure and have it represented in a visual way, in a meaningful way, so that you can see structure, as opposed to, like, you see a lot of these graphs, performance graphs and calling graphs, and it's just this giant circle of dots with lines mashed between them, and so it just looks like a spiral graph. It doesn't look, there's no meaning in that information. So how do we get that so that there's meaning, so that if you're going in, like, is there a way you can go in and say, hey, I want to look at this, and then, oh, look, this is called in all these different places. Oh, no, you know what, this is really a utility method, and it's only called, it never calls anybody. Just something to get a little bit more meaning out of it.
Sure.
I've also been looking at how to do code reviews, because like I'm working with a couple of developers, we're kind of remote, and to be able to go in and review each other's code, take a look, and tools for that. Variable usage. One of the challenges I've had to deal with is that it's very easy to figure out a local variable. It's very easy to figure out an interprocess variable, but it's actually extremely difficult to figure out process variables. Because when you're parsing the code, from a parsing point of view, there is absolutely no differentiation between a method, a component method, a plugin method, and an interprocess variable. They all look the same. There's nothing unique. And so I can obviously figure out project methods because I have 40 commands that allow me to get that, but I can't get component methods, and I can't get the plugin methods. So I've been playing with digging into compiler methods and being able to parse and try and figure out what are the process variables from that. So that has yielded some interesting results. So we'll see how that evolves.
Cool. Yeah, I would think this would all be very interesting to mash up with the 4D call logs. I forget exactly what their name is, but the logs of what commands have been sent to the server, and perhaps with your index analysis or with the language analysis to see how that information can be combined with your complexity analysis.
Yeah, and I've played with performance monitoring. I know you and I talked about there's this concept called flame graphs. There's been performance monitoring. Like, is there a way that, because I've got code. I know how to insert code at the beginning of methods and end of methods and manage all that. And so there's opportunities for doing some sort of running analysis to figure out, like, what is the coverage? How much is something used? What are the most used methods, least used methods? I mean, just because this is called 6 times in reference to another method doesn't mean it's ever called in production. When it's actually running, you could have one of these things that's really only called once, and then it's like 900 million times it's called because it just happens to be in a routine that's called by many other routines.
Right.
So there's lots of stuff. Dealing with doing the analysis on your code is a very interesting topic, very complex. It very quickly becomes convoluted in detail.
A lot of bias.
Tons of bias. And I've also thought about that. Style guidelines. I'm analyzing the code anyway, so there's opportunities for saying, you can set up a style guideline and say, I want this many spaces after this many blank lines, so on, so on, so on, and I can report on that. So, yeah, this is really my playground. So this is what I do for fun when I'm trying to think about something, trying to be a better programmer for myself. And you see a lot of discussions, and sometimes things that happen up on the NUD will drive some features as well.
Yeah, I mean, this has got a lot for a lot of opportunity for developers that are, like you said, working remotely with other developers, or remotely or not. I mean, being able to track changes in the application, in the methods, and also in the forms. Is just paramount when you're developing a larger application, especially with people tinkering different things in the code. It's really important to be able to track that, and also this is a really terrific tool for if you're not familiar with a code base. If you're just stepping in to help with a project, you're able to run a new code base through this and start to get a feel for where things are getting complex and how the indexes are being leveraged, and immediately see what can be done to start improving the situation. So I mean, it's a very, very terrific tool, and it's very elegantly laid out. Definitely congratulations for putting that together and making it available to the community.
Yeah, and eventually, like, the end game for me is, what I'd love to do is get this up on Git open source, and to be able to use Git to have code updates go in and out of it. That's one of my goals. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it will eventually, but just not yet. And then the idea is that, I mean, right now there's a lot of work that's gone into it. It's just me, but it'd be awesome if there's other people that could come in and continue to extend it, add more tools. We all have our own slant on things, and so there's some really smart people out there that are. It'd be nice to see these kind of tools grow, or maybe 4D wants to take some of this stuff and absorb it into their side. It would be fantastic. It'd be really nice that there's some more direct support for this kind of analysis of our own code bases.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting so tantalizingly close to being Git friendly in the 4D world, but we're just a hair away from actually being able to do it all natively and be able to reintegrate changes from external sources without pain. But we're so close, and then this will definitely help. So great. Just wanted to make note of where you can find this. The web address is openroaddevelopment.com, as you see here on the slide, or just Google Open Road Development in 4D. And you see here there's under the projects page, there's a dedicated page for the code analysis component. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions for Dani?
Unmute.
Hi, Dani. This is Adam from 4D. Just have a quick question. Let's say that you have version 12 and 13 available. Are you planning to do one for version 15?
For 15?
Yeah.
Yeah. It should be on the site.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's in the download side. So yeah, so basically at this point, the version 12 version I've abandoned. The version 13 I've abandoned, and I'm actually doing my development in 40v14 right now, and then I port it to 15. And I'm almost at the point where I'm going to abandon 14 and just be pure 15 and on. So yeah, absolutely, yeah, I'm definitely doing 14, 15. That's the dominant place. Yeah, for sure.
That's good. Just one more thing. I know that you're mentioning your challenge about tracking plugin as a command. I don't know if you take a look at all four. There is a new parameter for method getCode to get the token for the command, whether you have a command, table, field reference, or plugins. It gives you a unique code behind the command name also. That might be something that you probably can take advantage of in order to determine the plugins.
So then the plugin commands will have the token on as well? Okay, yes, good. Good. I saw that, but I didn't get that in that it would do the plugins.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome if we could get that on components as well. Or a way of getting the component methods. That would be spectacular. There's a lot more I can do with that. Because even something like, which components am I using? That's a very difficult question to ask if you have a complex code base and a lot of components. Which plugins do I use a lot, a little, all of those kind of questions. And so if I'm looking at refactoring and reducing and simplifying, that would be awesome. Like I've just spent some work. I've been doing some conversion on the JSON to JSON off of object tools, and to find all of the places where I use object tools has been a little bit. It's been a chore because I'm having to do all these different levels of searches and some way to know like what is my exposure on a particular component or a plugin is very useful information.
Yes. That's it for me.
Okay.
Really good. Thank you. I can see myself downloading it and try it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions out there? No.
And just to throw this out there, I'm always open for requests. Like most of the stuff that I get asked to do, people are asking about, I do. There's some localization in there. So like, there's something that you think would be kind of cool, then let me know. Great. Well, thank you so much for your contribution to the community. It's pretty great, and there's a lot to offer in there, and it's a very densely packed component and fully featured. So thank you so much for the demo. Our next meeting can be found on our schedule page at 4dmethod.com/schedule. We don't actually have any speakers planned for our next 3 meetings, so
I encourage all of you to send some suggestions or volunteer and show us some of the things that you're working on. It's a great way to show off your skills and maybe market a plugin or product or show off some of your web development with Wakanda or otherwise. Our next meeting's on August 31st, and then October 12th and December 7th as well. So please just go ahead and pick a date and let me know. I'm sure we'd all love to see what you're working on. Any additional questions for anyone at 4D or our presenter Dani today? Again, as Dani said, feedback is always appreciated with 4DMethod as well. Let us know what you'd like to see, and we can try and integrate it into our meetings. Well, thanks very much, and sorry for the difficulties earlier. We'll try and get things started a little bit smoother next time. But thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Thank you, Ed. Thanks, Dani.
All right, thanks, everyone. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.